I suppose it is finally time to talk about the kindred who are the monsters of myth. The enemy of the civilized world, the faction that easily gets the others to put aside their differences in order to wipe them out. For their mere existence is a threat to our own, and for clear reason. The traditions that all of us follow so loyally are something they openly reject, for they refuse to remain hidden in our world. They are monsters who openly reject their humanity, to the point where they almost view it as a game to destroy what little humanity they have left. They might even indulge in the idea of turning into nothing more than a feral beast destroying everything that they can. They are creatures of anarchy who wish to rule the world with an iron fist, public to all of their true nature. Religious zealots who think about little more than the end of the world, which they know as Gehenna. They think that killing all of the elders will rid them of this outcome. They see it as a holy crusade against the most ancient of our kind, except for the first, of course, Cain, who they view with godlike status. They often refer to themselves as the Sword of Cain, and this is in no way paradoxical or stupid in their fetid belief system. It is going to be hard for me to talk about them without showing my bias, I assure you. Right, I should probably get into their religious aspect. See, a lot of them believe that there is a sort of holy war going on. In fact, most kindred have this belief. They call it the jihad. It has nothing to do with the mortal word. This is its own thing. But in essence, it is the belief that there's only one fight that truly matters. The battle between the oldest of our kind and the youngest, and that all are secretly pawns in this endeavour. And this is the kind of thing the Sabbat believe in wholeheartedly, to the point where the two founding clans killed their own antediluvian, that is to say, the one of their third generation, the ones that founded the clans as we know them. I'll go into more detail on those events and their history another day, probably when I'm talking about the clans individually, but their history is something you do need to know about. So, as I have talked about before, the Convention of Thorns was the event that formed the modern sects, at least not exactly how they are now, but that is their springing up point, I should say, and the Sabbat were also born from this event, or rather, their refusal to agree to this event. They were outraged by the ideals of the traditions and stormed out of the meeting. They thought they were so powerful that they should never hide themselves nor their true nature. But since they were outnumbered to a ridiculous degree, most of them went into hiding anyway after this storming out, and none of them saw the irony in this, another thing that makes them unfathomably stupid. But, for the sake of their own sanity, they had to cling to something to justify it. And unfortunately, that thing was religion. See, back then, quite a lot of kindred were so powerful that they began to spring out mythologies of their own, even though quite a lot of them were killed during the First Inquisition. A lot of them were still feigned, and so one of our kind, known simply as Nod, started to collect them in a tome known simply as the Book of Nod. The scattered Sabbat took to these tales with founding vigour, and were beginning to know them as the Nodis Scripture. It is essentially a collection of almost all of our history from the perspective of the first vampire Cain. It, of course, ignores every other starting myth because, while it's a religion, you can't acknowledge the contradiction. See, this is the reason they are mostly organised like a religion than anything else. Throughout most of their history, and due to their low numbers, they've had to resort to kidnapping other members of our kind, which is the main reason you can find every clan within their ranks. While in modern nights, almost every clan can be found within any faction, since we're not exactly holding to the us versus them mentality anymore, though this also happened throughout all of Sabbat history. Just a darker reason that actually makes them worse. Oh, and if you think that is bad, just wait till you hear of their favourite tactic during wartime. In a form of desperation, and when they can't afford to lose their own numbers, they use a plan known as shovelheading. What they do is they kidnap a bunch of mortals, force them to dig their own graves, then embrace them all at once before burying them in said graves. Eventually, most of them absolutely starving for blood manage to claw their way out from the dirt, most of them not even knowing what's going on at the time, and half feral at the moment. The Sabbat will then stake them, stick them in the back of a van, and go to the location of their enemies, before letting them loose like wild dogs. If this does not work and kill them all, they'll try it again until their foe is gone. Do you see now why I hate them? They are paradoxically stupid and unnecessarily cruel, as well as religious zealots. An unbelievably dangerous and horrible mix. And truly, a formidable foe. But I should get into how they are organized now, at least on a modern basis. So for a start, they form packs. That is their word for a group of our kind. We, Camarilla and Anarchs, use the term coterie. The effect is exactly the same, no matter what they bark at you. The words are essentially interchangeable. But there is something different about their group. See, when they get a group of Sabbat together, they almost instantly hate each other, for obvious reasons. They're insufferable to be around. So in order to get a group like that to stick together without ripping each other apart, they have to form a blood bond. But it's not like the one-on-one types that you deal with in Camarilla society. This is a communal group blood bond, known as a Valdery. They still hate each other, but feel obliged to help each other, while they'll at least not rip each other apart. But before I speak of specific titles, I need to acknowledge that the Sabbat have an almost caste-like system, in that they have members known as true Sabbat, and members known as the false Sabbat, with an almost 50-50 split. See, most of them view their lower members of the ranks as just puppets, not even true members of their order, maybe not even real kindred in a way. And to be fair, though I admit this through gritting teeth, the Camarilla think a lot like this as well. Not to the point of calling them false Sabbat, however, and if you admit it there, you will at least get scorned at by some of us, myself included. The false Sabbat, by the way, are usually the newly embraced without permission, or maybe once a ghoul who has been embraced, perhaps a shovelhead who somehow survived, or an exile from another sect. The only way to truly start out as a true Sabbat is to be embraced by, or with permission from, a leader. And all of the religious leaders have the power to make a false Sabbat a true Sabbat, now letting them speak to their elders, as well as actually form in a pack and not just be used as cannon fodder. But I'd like to now get into the leaders of these group of anarchists, and I'd like to start with the lowest to the highest. So, the pack priest is held by one member of the pack, maybe two if their numbers start getting a bit too high, say maybe 20, but never more than that. It is their job to see to the spiritual well-being of their members, and enacting the rites and rituals thereof. They have a lot of these rites and rituals, just know they're not important enough for me to list, but turning a false Sabbat into a true one is one of said acts. They are mostly a ceremonial thing. But they are not the leaders of the packs, no. The leader of the packs are known as the Ductus, and I have genuinely heard some of them refer to them as the Pack Alpha, which makes me laugh every blasted time. The title is usually held by the toughest and meanest thug in said packs. The packs are very much a might makes right style of system, unbeholden to the rulership above them, other than the occasional order. But they are not up for any line of progression, no. The Ductus is essentially at the height of the power they will ever be. There's no more promotion from there. Only the priest gets promoted into positions even higher than them, which should show you how the higher-ups truly view the packs. The rank that the priests can then become is known as the bishop, another religious title, and the first to be independent and above the pack system. In fact, they are usually ones giving orders to the Ductus around them, and they, loyally and followers of their religion, hold every word. There are few members of this rank per city, and it is a very important one for that reason. and to the point where they can get their own soldiers, known as Templars. Some even call them Paladins, but the effect is the same. They are members of previous packs who have been promoted to be the direct workforce of a bishop, his hitmen, his bodyguards, whatever the bishop really wants them to be. An upgrade to be sure, but not one their lives will see any change in. The bump in prestige would be nice for those who care, but for the most part, they would be unaffected. I should also note that these Templars tend to follow the individuals over their life, not their rank. If a bishop is promoted, so too are the Templars under their command. It is for this reason that they are actually quite loyal. They are loyal to their individual ruler, not the title and rank. Well, that and most tend to be blood bonded. I'd also like to note that I've just covered what 90% of all Sabbat will ever even meet. This is very much getting into the territory of every single one of them bar a few individuals. So now, I'd like to get into those few individuals. But, getting to the next rank, it is the Archbishop, where little changes, other than the fact that they are in control of a whole city, in the same way a prince does for the Camarilla. Despite how they will howl that it is different, it really isn't. The only difference I can note is that how they're elected. Unlike the Camarilla Prince, where there's almost always one as soon as there's one Camarilla in the city, the Sabbat only promote a bishop to archbishop if they control it. They don't need to wipe out their foes, just make sure that they cannot threaten their foe, at least for a few years. They won't give up the title if there is an invasion, that they will not appoint a new one if that one falls during it. At least that's how it's supposed to operate. But many bishops declare themselves to be the archbishop as soon as it's possible to do so. In fact, they sometimes claim cities that are completely outnumbered 3-1 in. Case in point, London before the fall had an archbishop. Despite never having any control over the city, they didn't even have a fraction of the sewers within the city, and yet they had an archbishop. But I should also note there is a non-religious title that is almost on par to them, known as the Priestess, who have a lot of the same powers, but have no control over the bishops or over religious figures, but more or less guide and command the pacts. To be more accurate, they command the Ductus, the leaders of every pact, but not the priests within it. I hope you see now why it gets a bit confusing. The titles of religious and non-religious sort of need each other to survive, but they also stop each other from taking over fully. It rarely actually works as intended, but it's not that unusual given how, well, when humans did the same system it was just as much as chaos as when the Sabbat do, so I can't really fault them for it. And now getting into the 0.1% of their organisation, I hope these metaphors aren't being lost on you, they have two more titles that are very high figures. They're global figures, in fact. The highest religious title that you can have is the Cardinal. Basically, a mobile archbishop that does not need to answer to anyone say the one title that is above them. There is rarely more than, say, 13 of this title. They're supposed to represent all of the major clans, but that's not really how it works out. There tends to be 3 or 4 Amici and La Sombra, and a few of the others. But now we speak of the highest title a single Sabbat can hold, and it is a non-religious title, known simply as the Regent, and they are in essence the leader of the entirety of the sect. They stay in the most secure city within the Sabbat territories, at the current time is Mexico City, I believe, for it is a stronghold that they completely dominate. They can do whatever they want, and all who meet them should know of their power, and they have a formal introduction every time, I'm sure. They're usually underground, not in a literal sense, more so their location is unknown, and all members of the Sword of Cain heed their words. I think that's enough about this wretched organization. I grow sick even thinking about them. I hope you see now why they are our perfect foe. They are truly monsters, yet think themselves organized. They act with no remorse, and completely reject their humanity. They want the beast to control all, and they're paradoxical to boot. Thank you for listening to my tales I'm the Ashspawn. Feel free to leave a like, comment, or subscribe. It would really mean a lot to me. But, till next we meet, fellow traveller, have a good day.